If you've been alive on this earth and can understand words, you've probably heard that you need to save money, pay off debt, and invest. Often this advice comes in passing or without any further explanation as to how to do it well. And if you're anything like me, you don't have unlimited money to do this all at the same time. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the best order to pay off your debt, save money, and invest. And at the end, I have a few bonus tips as well in order to take your financial smarts to the next level. If we're just meeting, my name is Anthony, and I want to help you be smarter with your money so that you can live without financial stress, not only today, but for the rest of your life. And one of the most stressful things can be wondering if you're doing everything right or not. So let's alleviate a little bit of that stress today. Now, I wish it was as easy as saying step 1, pay off debt. Step 2, save money. Step 3, invest. But it does depend on your situation, and it looks a little bit more like an interconnected web than it does a straight line. And because personal finance is just that, personal, I'm going to make a few assumptions in this video about who you are, but I will give some nuances to each of these steps that I'm going to go over so that if you're not exactly fitting into this category of the person that I'm describing, you'll be able to figure out what to do for you. My first assumption about you is that you have bad debt. Now that's credit card debt, car loans over 4%, furniture loans, payday loans, medical loans over 4%, basically anything over 4%. And we'll get to why I say 4% here in a second. My second assumption is that you have a monthly surplus in your budget or extra cash. And if you don't, wait until the bonus tip at the end and I'll help you figure out what to do from there. My third assumption is that you have a long time horizon. Now that means that you don't have to take any money out of your investments for at least 10 years, but it's probably closer to 30 or 40 for you. My fourth and final assumption about you is that you want to end up with the most money possible at the end of this process, and you're willing to take a few smart financial risks in order to get there. Okay, with that in mind, this is the order that you should pay off debt, save money, and invest. First, save $1,000 in a mini emergency fund. Second, pay off debt above 4% while investing up to the employer match. Third, save your fully funded emergency fund. And fourth, invest at least 50% of your income and more if you want to be financially independent faster. So here's exactly why I say that you should do it in that order. First, save $1,000. If you're just getting started handling your money in a smart way, you likely have a lot of debt. And if that debt is above 1% interest, you're actually financially better off to pay off that debt than you are to save money at this point. However, personal finance is really personal, and people like you and me are naturally risk averse. So having $0 in the bank while you pay off all of your debt probably isn't the most viable solution because you can become really stressed out with even the smallest $50 emergency. And that could derail your whole progress with getting started on this journey. Now, $1,000 isn't a perfect number, and you're smart enough to figure out what that number is for you, so here are a couple of considerations. If you live at home with your parents or with a bunch of roommates and you don't have a lot of monthly expenses, you might be able to get away with less because you might not have a potential emergency that would come up that's more than $300, $400, or $500 that you can foresee in the near future. But if you have a lot of responsibilities, or you or your partner would feel more secure with a little bit more money in the bank, then save a little bit more money than that $1,000. However, I would recommend not going over 1 month worth of your expenses in your first mini emergency fund because you'll end up paying a lot more in interest on your debts while you wait to pay it off. Now, when I first put aside that $1,000, it felt like a massive accomplishment. And if this is the first time that you're doing that, it's probably going to feel that way for you too. Because even though I previously had $1,000 in my possession, and even more than that, I didn't have any intentionality with it. So after you have your mini emergency fund saved, it's time to pay off your debts. Now, the first step to paying off your debt is to make sure that you know what all of your debt is. So you need to have written down who your debt is owed to, so whichever bank or housing lender it is. You need to put how much of debt you have, you need to put the interest rate, and you need to put the minimum monthly payments. You need to make the minimum monthly payments on all of your debts while you're paying off the rest of your debt, but you're going to tackle them one at a time. Now, some big financial personalities advocate for a balance-based method of paying off your debt, which is also known as the snowball method, and that's where you're going to pay off your debts from the smallest balance up to the highest balance. But because we're assuming that you want the most money in your pocket at the end of the day, that's not what we're going to end up doing. You should go after your debt using the interest rate or avalanche method of paying it off. Now with this, you're going to put all the extra money that you have beyond your minimum monthly payments towards the interest rate that is the highest. So if you have a credit card that's at 28% interest, you're going to pay that off first, even if that has a $5,000 balance on it, whereas you might have a $500 debt that might only be at a 4% interest rate, because you're going to end up paying way more interest if you decide to pay off that $500 balance first while waiting to pay off $500 worth of 28% interest debt. Once that highest interest rate debt is paid off, you're going to move on to the debt that has the next highest interest rate, and so on and so forth. And every time that you do this, you're going to be able to pay more on the next debt on a monthly basis because you're going to not only have one less minimum payment, but you're going to be able to use all that surplus money on that next debt as well. Now, doing it this way is going to leave you with by far the most amount of money at the end of this process because you paid way less in interest. But if you feel way more comfortable doing it the other way, or you feel like you understand that way better, do what's best for you. As long as your debt gets paid off, that's the win. But there are two important things to consider when you're paying off your debt. You should have the financial goal to start investing money. And while you're paying off your debt is actually potentially the first time that you're going to start to do that. But that is only if your employer has a 401k or 403b match. A 401k or 403b can be a part of your benefits package at your job, and sometimes employers will even match a certain amount of your salary if you contribute to that as well. When I worked at Fifth Third Bank, if I contributed 6% of my salary to my 401k, Fifth Third would match with 7% of my salary. So I would automatically get a return of 116%. And that's even before I had invested any of the money. That's why you should invest up to the match of your 401k or 403b while you're paying off debt. And you probably don't have debt that's above 100% interest rate. Because if you did, you might want to pay that off first before you get the match. And that leads into this second thing that you should think about when you're paying off your debt. Because if you noticed earlier, I said that you should pay off your debt above 4% interest rate. Now that's because the next step is to invest your money, and based off the historic average return of the stock market over a long period of time, you're probably going to get between 6 and 10% of an increase in your stock value every year. So even though you may have some debt, your investments are actually going to be making you more money on an average basis over the long term if you have debt at 4% or below and your investments are making 6 to 10%. So if you want to maximize your money, keep your debt below 4%. But if that stresses you out even at all, just pay off all your debt. Your money is meant to serve you, your family, and your community, and those things will not be served well if you're always stressed out about it. After you've paid off at least all of your debt above 4% interest, it's time to fully fund your emergency fund. And if you've heard anyone talk about emergency funds before, you might have been surprised when I said that the low end of an emergency fund is $5,000 rather than saying that it's 3 months worth of your expenses. Because most of the general advice out there is that your emergency fund should be between 3 to 6 months of your expenses, whatever you're comfortable with. And some people even say that you should have 12 months of expenses saved in an emergency fund. I don't think any of that is wrong, and I think that how much you save for your emergency fund is potentially one of the most personal or complex parts of this process, which is why in 2 weeks I'm dropping a video about how much you should save in your emergency fund. So subscribe to stay tuned for that video. But I don't really have anything that's super expensive. I have a couple different insurances in place, and I'm working to diversify my income stream. So $5,000 would actually probably be more than enough to cover any major emergency that we would have. That being said, my emergency fund right now is $8,000, and my wife and I aren't planning on taking it down to $5,000 and investing the $3,000 difference, even though that might be mathematically the smartest thing to do. We're just pretty comfortable with our $8,000 right now. And so if your emergency fund needs to be a little bit higher just to give you that extra security, that's great. A comfortable benchmark is probably about 3 months worth of your expenses if you don't have any kids and you're pretty ambitious. But think about your family situation, your income situation, and any other potential emergency factors and make the best decision for you. Or just watch that video in a couple of weeks. Since at this point you've paid off all of your debt, you can actually use all that money that you're using to pay off the banks and pay yourself and just put it into your emergency fund in a high yield savings account. And during this time, you're still going to want to invest up to the match in your employer-sponsored 401k or 403b. After your emergency fund is fully funded, it's time to really start pouring into your investments. I have an easy beginner's guide to investing coming out in 3 weeks about exactly where and when to invest your money. But you're going to take that money that you were using to pay off your debt and save towards your emergency fund, and now you're going to put it towards investing. And a good starting point is at least 15% of your income going into investments. And the real quick order that I would put that in is to matching your employer-sponsored 401k in a Roth 401k if you can, putting money into a Roth IRA up to the match, and then investing back in your Roth 401k up to the match of the 401k. And if you've done that, then you've invested $26,000 almost. And if you need to invest more, wait for that video in 3 weeks and I'll show you exactly where you should invest that. Okay, I promise you bonus tips, and here they are. My first bonus tip is to make sure that your employer match is vested when you're looking at investing up to the employer match while paying off your debt and saving money. Being vested just means that you own what they give you. And some employers will vest you immediately when they give you that money, just like at Fifth Third Bank. But other employers, which I learned the hard way, don't do that. While I was paying off debt and starting to save for my emergency fund, I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and they have a 3% 401k match, but if you really don't look at the details of it, you don't realize that it's on a vesting schedule. So I was investing up to the match, and then I started looking into the plan a little bit more in depth, and I saw that I had to wait 2 years until I got any of the money that they gave me, and I had to wait 6 years until I got all of it. And I honestly didn't think I was going to be there for 2 years, so I stopped investing in my 401k up to the match and kept putting all that money towards debt. My second bonus tip is to be gracious with yourself about your time frame. Personal finance is not a race, though I know that sometimes it can feel like it if you're just looking at a lot of people on Instagram or YouTube talking about how well they're doing with their money. But it probably took them a really long time to get there. If I've done something that's faster or slower than you, it doesn't make me better or worse, it just makes us different, and that's perfectly okay. Having a plan and working that plan is what makes you smart with your money, not how fast you reach one of your goals. So if it is going to take you a little bit longer and you can see that, set up small incentives for yourself when you reach smaller milestones during that process. And if you ever need motivation, reach out to me in the comments down below or over my Instagram, and I will become your financial hype man. My third bonus tip is for you if you don't know what a monthly surplus in your budget is, or if you even have one. All it means is that you have more income than you have expenses every single month. And if you're just starting out or you didn't know what that term means and you want to figure out exactly where you are right now with your finances, watch this video right here and you'll be able to lay out where you are on one sheet of paper. You don't have to do it on a physical sheet. There is a Google Sheet that goes with it that you are able to fill out yourself, and that's linked in the description of that video. But click here and I'll see you right there.